fun. You have no original thoughts, you have nothing.
And so I'm very proud to be from a state that has good gun control and the second lowest rate of gun deaths in the country. And I'm here to say that all states should have the same kind of comprehensive gun control laws that we have in Connecticut because they work and we've proved it. And we're also here to say stop the violence in cities and in schools and all over the nation. It's not a partisan issue, it's an availability of guns issue.
We're here to rally for better gun control, especially regarding like assault weapons.
So you want assault weapons specifically more regulated, or?
More regulated, banned altogether. I mean, we don't need them. Assault's in the name. It's for killing. That's what they're for. Like, unless you're like on a shooting range or something, there's no other reason for it. So we can get rid of them.
And how would you qualify an assault rifle so we can?
Like AR-15s, anything that's like automatic, like can shoot like a ton of bullets, you know. And like when the Second Amendment was made, a lot of it was like rifles that took 5 minutes to load, not something that you could wipe out 20 people with in like the span of 5 minutes. It's not realistic that anyone would ever need them.
No, I just agree wholeheartedly, and it just shouldn't be as easy as it is in America to be able to own a gun and to be able to use a gun.
So it's just more regulations, and you want to ban all, you'd say, so any weapon that has like multiple rounds in there?
Yeah, something that's like intended to kill. Like a military weapon doesn't need to be bought at Walmart. That's not necessary. You can still have a hunting rifle, you know, people aren't saying take that away necessarily. It's just have some control on what people are getting and what kind of people are getting into it too.
So we have to have gun control in this country. Things are completely out of control. Nobody needs, first of all, in terms of assault rifles, nobody needs to have a military-style weapon. You're not hunting animals with military-style weapons. You hunt people with them, and we've seen over and over again that that's what happens. It needs to stop. We need background checks. You know, people have the right to hunt. They have the right to protect themselves. I am not a big proponent of the Second Amendment, but I understand that. But the types of weapons that people have been using to engage in mass assaults has to stop. What's sad is we spend more money and we have more concern about protecting the unborn. We have more concern about so many other things, but yet we do nothing to make sure that our children go to school and come home alive.
A lot of people on the opposing argument like to say that, the assault rifles, anybody could do the same damage with a pistol as they could with an assault rifle as a school. So would you recommend?
All right, I'm not a weapons expert, but from everything I understand, that's complete nonsense. From my limited knowledge of semi-automatic and automatic weapons, the reason you can kill so many people is you pull the trigger and it just keeps shooting out bullets. I've shot pistols. When you shoot a pistol, even if you have a bunch of pistols, it's very different than standing there with an AK-47 or an AR-15 and just firing away. I don't see how they can make that argument.
Volunteering to try to ensure that this stays a safe place for people to rally.
So, we appreciate that the police are trying to keep people safe. I don't think Boston always respects our First Amendment rights. At first, they wanted to put us way back there, and we had to say no. But, this is a suitable spot. We can still be seen, and we can still be heard, so I'm happy.
In general, what are you here to organizing for?
So Resist Marxism organized this with June 2nd for the Second Amendment. We're doing several counter rallies across the nation to the March for Our Lives. The March for Our Lives is funded by big money. They are funded by elites and the politicians and the media. Don't let them fool you that they're out there organized by children. There's a lot of money behind it. And if anything, we have children here also on our side.
What would you say to people who want to confiscate the guns to find it would bring more security at the schools and everything? And
well, that leads to tyranny. All tyrants want to disarm the populace. When you talk to a lot of these people, it's obvious they aren't familiar with firearms. They have no knowledge of firearms. They talk about banning semi-automatic weapons. There's 200 to 300 million privately owned firearms. They want the government to come and take them in. They say that Trump's a dictator, and then they're asking Trump to disarm them. Their arguments don't have a lot of credence, and they don't make a lot of sense.
Today, March for Our Lives.
Here to demonstrate for the American Constitution and for the Second Amendment and for the Bill of Rights. I grew up in Soviet Union, which was totalitarian society, and I saw myself what happens when the population is disarmed.
What did you see in firsthand? Some people don't know the history of what happened in the Soviet Union and Communist China.
What happens is that when the police come to take you, you just go along and they kill you, they torture you, instead of resisting, because there is no value of the system. The possession of a gun makes you an independent unit, that you can stand for your rights and defend what is right and not just go to slaughter like the ships.
Well, we're with Boston Free Speech. We're here to defend the Second Amendment. We're wearing the masks just for, personal reasons. We don't want to get doxxed. That does threaten our safety. People like that over there, they'll come after you. One guy was actually jumped outside the Harvard coop once. He was beaten pretty badly. And a lot of us have jobs and such. We don't want to, risk ourselves. But we're here. We're just defending the Second Amendment and saying it's your right to own a gun, and that it's very important to preserving the First Amendment. Because if you don't, if the Second Amendment didn't exist, then we wouldn't have the right to prevent tyrannical government, and then they could regulate your speech. It's a slippery slope. Once you lose certain rights, you start to lose the rest.
So what would you say that says about where we're at on that slippery slope in regards to not being able to come out and discuss things and discuss ideas without being worried about being assaulted and doxxed or whatever?
Yeah, I feel like that's a big part of, protests. We're in a very polarized America right now, and people are very, violent and agitated, and that's very bad.
We're here to basically support the Second Amendment, which all these young children who've been brainwashed by their teachers and everybody else are trying to take away. And basically, they don't understand that the phrase, "your Second Amendment rights shall not be infringed," they don't understand it, and they need to learn that in the schools, because it's not the guns. There are more situations that are causing these issues, and a lot of it is parentless homes, the violent video games that are desensitizing them. There's all kinds of issues. Mainly they're liberal teachers that are just confusing them on whether they're a boy or a girl or fluid or whatever they are. You put all these things together, and it's creating a society that's just totally out of control.
Speaking of out of control societies, what do you think it says about having to be surrounded by police and able to be able to attend an event in the public common and just discuss ideas?
It's disgusting, but you know what? I'm I'm an old guy now, and I'm here because if other people won't get out and do it, I'm going to do it, because we need to voice that, hey, we need to save this country. I would tell your listeners to really look and study the United Nations Agenda 21, 2030, and Sustainable Development. That's what the progressive liberals have in store for us in the future. Hopefully I'll be dead before that happens, but it seems like the push for the 2030 to make this all happen, such as what's going on in the European Union. Do you want to live like the people in the European Union? I certainly don't, because what we have here is special. And I don't want to be like anybody else. I don't want to be like the European Union. I don't want a one world government. What we have here is not perfect, but it's damn close to it.
Yes, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Hooray! Shall not infringe! 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 Yes, no violence. Thank you very much. You need to tell them that. They're the ones that are violent. The guys in the mask are the violent ones, not us.
Reasonable search, we risk our right to bear arms. If we allow the government to enter our homes or to search our records without a warrant, we risk undermining not just our Second Amendment rights, but the entire Bill of Rights. I won't let this happen.
Officer shot in his classroom and nobody got hit. And there was the incident. I don't know about the incident.
There's a separate incident where no one was injured. My thought process there is, so if you have those two situations where there were people with guns, accidental firings. So there are so many schools across our nation. We would be complicating the situation by presenting more guns in that environment. There would be more accidental shootings.
That's minuscule compared to the look at Chicago. How many people are dying from killing each other there? Does anybody say anything? Yeah, but it's minuscule when you think about how many schools, if there's 2 accidental shootings.
Why would we open the door for that to be a possibility? Why would we want that minuscule chance for someone to get shot?
Our lives then got hurt. Yes, it would. It would have saved 17 or almost in Parkland. He didn't go in. He was told to stand down. He stood down. Look into that, Sheriff. He's a nut.
I don't want to be in that situation myself, right? I'm not trained for that. He was trained for that, and he didn't act in that moment.
Why didn't he act is the question I wonder. Why?
And would you include pistols, or because there's multiple rounds in a magazine of a pistol, or?
It depends. I feel like that can be not just for killing. I don't know. I know that I'm from kind of backwoodsy, so there are shooting ranges and stuff that people would use them on, and in that case it's more safe. You're supposed to go there to shoot things, but anything that's the intent is to harm others, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think you need it.
Same. Yeah, I agree.
So in general, just more regulation on all firearms, not just the rifles, and in particular high capacity or multiple rounds.
Background checks too. You need you should have a license. You should have training. You can't just go into a store and buy a gun. That's ridiculous. I wouldn't know how to use it. If I just went in and got one, there's a good chance I'd shoot myself in the foot. You shoot your eye out or whatever, Yeah. So you need training for it. It's like driving a car. Just so you know how to safely use it. It's the same deal. If it can take someone's life, there should be a little more regulation.
There was a recently shooting down in Maryland.
Just died.
A woman died, yeah. And but that was used with a pistol.
I'm aware.
And they're trying to say that because that was stopped with a gun, that guns would be okay. Guns should be promoted to be for security rather than taken away, as we saw. And
what about what happened last week, and I forget which state, where the teacher accidentally set off a gun and I believe injured one student, perhaps more. mean, what, schools are going to become shooting ranges? This is the United States of America. You don't have guns in schools, have teachers walking around with sidearms. This is insanity.
So you're promoting just gun-free zones still in the schools, and
100%.
and you don't want teachers to be
Not no guns on any teacher.
just because you think it'd be promoting more violence in schools and more things to happen.
I think there's the possibility of that. I also think the crazy people who went to Pulse nightclub, went to the school in Florida, if they know that there are teachers with weapons, that might even arouse them more, and they might think this is great. I can have a shootout. I don't know, but I went to school. I was in grade school 5 decades ago. Weapons in school, teachers being trained to shoot. This is sheer insanity. My other argument to anybody who, would be saying no, the example you just gave in terms of pistols, we're the only industrialized nation that has this problem. How is it other countries don't have this problem? There's a reason why they don't have it. Or look at what Australia did after its last mass shooting. They haven't had an incident since then. Over 30,000 people a year died from guns in this country. There's something fundamentally wrong.
Do you see any parallels, growing up in the Soviet Union, do you see any parallels with the society that we're seeing today as things are evolving in America and the various debates?
No, I see an open first right amendment exercise. People are free to speak, exchange ideas, and I think that's great. And we have different points of view, and we should be able to argue our points, and we have the framework of a constitutional Bill of Rights to support us in that endeavor.
Are you worried about the United States? Do you think it's possible that the United States could ever deteriorate into a situation like the Soviet Union had, or?
I hope not. There's a more than millennium-old Anglo-Saxon culture, which United States is continuation of, from Magna Carta to provisions of Oxford's to parliamentary execution of King Charles I, Stuart, with Cromwell. It all developed in independence of a human being, establishing the worth of one single human against the state.
So that's the main issue here, is that you think
It's the main issue, and that's why I'm here. I'm actually anti-Trump. I see him as a Putin's puppet, but I'm here just to defend that framework that exists and give us rights. And I hope the United States is not going to be jeopardized, but if we all rely on internet and virtual living, it's just been proven that you can get elected wrong people. But even if you have Putin's puppet in the White House, that still does not jeopardize the whole American framework.
If one of these guys is gonna come after me, trying to beat me all to hell, call me a Nazi, I would want, something on my waist to protect myself with. Because, it's our founding right. I fully believe that, as the Constitution says, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
So it's more of a deterrent than anything?
Sometimes it is. Again, the main purpose of the Second Amendment is resistance to tyrannical government. But again, having the right to bear arms, you also then have the freedom and liberty to protect yourself from bodily harm from wherever it comes.
Did their job, called the police, I guess, and reported this. The police put 2 and 2 together. Dude's buying a lot of buying a lot of ammunition. He's been checked into a mental health facility. Yeah. They go into his home. Good. Yeah, they find bomb-making equipment. They find an AR-15, several other firearms, and all this ammunition.
Great. That's how it should happen.
And yet we have so many gaps and holes in our systems where a guy who's mentally ill was able to buy that weapon. He was able to purchase that weapon.
Mentally ill guy to take away rights from 300 million Americans. Right. No way.
Because you're just reinforcing that.
Oh yeah, they're trying. Every bit's
guns
trying.
don't kill people. People do. Right there, you've reinforced it.
It's true. And I think if we made access to those weapons of war, if there were more steps for you to go through, I think that we could all agree that that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Because most
I don't want to take them away.
Most gun owners.
Yeah, but these people do.
Yeah.
Oh
yes,
yeah, they
do.
I came in here on the train with people with signs that said "March for Peace, no guns, take away assault rifles, take away guns." So that's
look at Maura Healey.
We talked to them.
She's our Attorney General. She's a gun grabber.
They couldn't speak. They were just angry, anti-gun people.
We've had these conversations for so long, and people keep dying.
Since the
Yeah. And I don't want to minimize that, but that's a separate discussion.
Children are dead.
I can
killed
be
every
angry.
year in America.
I raised 8 children.
300,000. And this group here talks so much about lives matter, but those 300,000 babies don't matter to this group.
5 million babies.
The 5,000 gun deaths matter because they want to take our guns.
My thought is this.
Maybe Planned Parenthood had something to do with guns, they'd care about the babies.
Yeah.
I definitely see your point there. A lot of people, I just want to get your point on all the different talking points here. They also say that the Second Amendment's there obviously for the security of the nation and whatnot, and to keep things secure. Do you have any qualms about disarming the population, as is what has happened in other? They always say that the Germans took the guns before they killed a bunch of Jews, and do you think disarming the population before would allow? Like, if you look at what other countries, guns could be smuggled into a country, and then people could be...
First of all, I don't believe you're ever going to take away the guns in this country. There are way too many of them. What I do believe is if you had legislation basically saying it is illegal to own a semi-automatic weapon and they have to be turned in, and again, I'm not a legislator, I don't know if the government buys them back or whatever the process would be. There are always going to be people who are going to be hoarding them. I know people, I have been in their homes, who have well over 20 weapons. They use them for hunting and target practice. I think it's insane, but they do. I don't know what the mechanism is to get those guns out of the hands of people, but getting back to what I said initially, I'm not a fan of the Second Amendment. I view it differently than every American has the right to have a weapon. It's not what it was created for, but regardless, I don't believe for 2 seconds if the Founding Fathers had any idea that the types of weapons that are available today could be in the hands of any citizen. I honestly don't believe they would be advocates of that, and I think it has to stop and they have to be removed.
So more training for people who want to exercise their rights to buy a gun, or in general?
Definitely, yeah. You can still get your guns. You just, if you're confident that you deserve them, you should be able to pass the training fine. It shouldn't be an issue.
And also, there's a big issue. People want to keep the schools safe immediately, and what you're talking about is, it takes legislation and people to do things in Washington, and so it's kind of more delayed. Would you be in support of more security, like armed security, in the meanwhile at schools to keep children safe, or?
I'm not about the whole arming teachers thing. I know a lot of teachers that aren't about it, because, I'd be more worried about a student getting into the gun than anything, too. As for police officers, I had them at our high school. They weren't bad people or anything. It's okay if they're there to protect. And there are also people who are trained to use that. So I'm less opposed to having people keep our schools safe. Not that it should be necessary, but given why we're here, it is a necessity. So if they want to step up security in the case of having more on-school officers, you could do that for bigger schools.
Okay, anything you wanted to add?
Nope, I agree. I just don't believe in arming teachers. I feel like that's not exactly the route that we need to take, but definitely having locks on school buildings, having 1 or 2 polices on patrol at the school, I think that should be enough, along with the legislation that should come out of this. Then that should be enough to prevent this from happening.
The majority of the people support gun rights. There's a strong gun culture in America, and we just want to let them know that there's those of us in Boston that also support gun rights, and we're not just going to accede to their demands. We're going to fight back, and we're going to protect gun rights and the Second Amendment.
Do you feel that it's possible to, I was talking to people over at the other rally there, and they were talking about repealing the Second Amendment. Do you think it's possible to do that, or?
I doubt it's possible to repeal the Second Amendment. Unfortunately, tyrannical governments, they're not going to respect law, but if you look into what it takes to pass an amendment that would repeal the Second Amendment, it's just not going to happen. There's too much support for gun rights in the states. There's no way they're going to get, 2/3 or 3/5 of the states in Congress to do that. There's just no way.
A lot of them were saying that the purpose when the Founding Fathers created the Second Amendment, they didn't have in mind the kind of technology that we have for weapons today. Do you think that applies, and should we go back to only allowing people with single shot muskets, or?
That's just ridiculous. Of course, they didn't have semi-automatic weapons then, but they did have crank guns that could fire just as rapidly. I think it would be pretty obvious to anyone that they saw that firearm technology would improve. If they were really concerned about that, then they could have put in the amendment, except when firearm technology improves. They didn't. The intent was to have the people armed so that they could resist a tyrannical government. It's always been the intent of the Second Amendment, and it hasn't changed.
Do you have any suggestions what we could do to keep kids in school more safe in the meanwhile?
So everyone has to realize, yes, in a free society, you're not going to be safe when people have freedom. But I think in general, freedom is better than tyranny. There's lots of things we could do. We could educate people on guns. We could also improve the background check system, which the NRA is on board with. We could arm resource officers in the school. And in my opinion, they've taken a lot of morals out of the schools, and that would help if we put that back in.
Yeah. This whole thing is USA. And I feel like we're getting to a situation where folks like us are divided on these opposite sides because we've got like little propaganda beasts running around in our country, and they're trying to make folks like you hate folks like that, not getting us to recognize that we're all the same.
50-year-old women come out and fight for the Second Amendment who have never gone out to fight before. That's what they've done.
Right. It's not
They've
propaganda
awoken a
with me.
sleeping
It's
giant.
I believe in the Constitution, and I believe my rights. I'm 62 years old. I was here. I saw when America was great, when you felt safe, when the country was prosperous.
When you could have marches like this and
when
not
our
be
parents
surrounded
fought
to be protected.
in World War II, they were the greatest generation. Like I said, economy was booming. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see socialism. I don't want to see Marxism. I want a regular old capitalist country. That's me.
I feel like the thing is that we agree on things that we were just talking about for more steps to access this firearm, and somebody has convinced you that these people who believe that as well are communists and that they're socialists. But they're not communists and socialists. They're just humans. They're actually citizens of the same country that you are, and they probably want similar things.
Were you here in August last year?
No.
In August last year, there was a free speech rally held here with people who had permits for that. But Black Lives Matter and Antifa engulfed this common, and those people were in a little thing. They couldn't speak. They couldn't have free speech because these Antifa and Black Lives Matter took free speech away from Boston that day.
Yeah, they did. And I think that's a shame.
So that's why we're here. That's why we're here, because those people couldn't speak in August.
Right.
So to hell with that.
Yeah.
Now 50 and 60-year-old ladies are coming out to say, oh no, there will be free speech in Boston.
Yeah. I have 8 kids, and I was never afraid to send one to school ever, ever, ever.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think we can agree on some things, and I feel like there's common ground, and we got to somehow work on getting our side past the divisions, where folks over here are looking at you as Nazis, and you in here are looking at them as commies and socialists, because it's bullshit. We're citizens of the United States of America, and we got to try to find a way to get to unity rather than this division that we have right now.